Hello and welcome to our session on physically active family time. My name is Matt Locatellier
My name is Maeve Barry.
and we are thankful and excited to be sharing with you some points that we think are important to help young individuals with charge be physically active with their family. And we have a presentation that we will share the screen with and follow along. So just to start off, together, Maeve and I have a combined 30 years experience teaching students with charge syndrome and teaching them the ability to be physically active and physically literate. So we're just going to give you a little bit of an intro on what physical activity means and kind of is. So physical literacy, and there's a definition of this that I think explains really well what we try to do with students with charge and young individuals. And it's, we teach them the ability to move with confidence and confidence in a variety of different physical activities in multiple environments for the benefit of the development of the whole person. So I think that's important to kind of realize what we do as adaptive physical education teachers and that we try to help families with. Some of the areas that we focus on is movement skills and specific coordination and balance and building endurance, and then building routines within different physical activities. So just to have an understanding of what we do as adaptive physical education teachers.
So during this session, we hope that you'll gain an understanding of physical activity, as we just outlined, what it is and what it can look like for your family. As we know, every young individual with charge is different, but we hope that you can take some ideas from what you see today to learn how to plan activities, think about timing, facility needs, successful strategies that will work for you and your family. Feel empowered to choose those suitable activities for not just the individual with charge, but the whole family, so that you can do it together, and then how to modify to meet the needs of the whole family.
Okay, so starting off, what is physical activity? And I think the main concept we want to get across to families and people is that physical activity can just be any movement, body movement that expends energy, and where exercise is really physical activity that's planned, structured, and followed continuously, over time. So you can be physically active. You don't necessarily have to be exercising. So when things we talk about, that's what we mean when we say physical activity. It doesn't necessarily mean doing exercises. It just means moving your body. And then the CDC does recommend 60 minutes of physical activity per day, pretty much for all individuals. But that being said, what we strive for is to do as much as you can for as long as you can. Some is better than none, and then gradually build up. Okay, and the importance of physical activity in, I think people are aware, that it is important, but just some other little key aspects that, being physically active from a young age, there's some literature that has shown you're more likely to be physically active as an adult. And there's some correlation between being movement and language development, as well as the benefit of self-regulation, physical and mental benefits, as well as just benefits of your overall health. So, that's some of the reasons why physical activity is important, and starting at a young age. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into some areas that we think, based on work that we've had with students over the years, are important, and things that are important to consider when planning in developing some family time, physical activity as the bell goes off. Okay, our little formula is try activities, try different activities, assess, observe the activities, and then adjust them accordingly. And I think to make things simplified, that's the formula that you want. And when we talk about assessing the activity, it can be boiled down to three things we're kind of looking for, that you can kind of look for, is the task being successfully completed? Is the individual enjoying? Is your child enjoying the activity? They smile and they laugh and they giggling, or is there no interest at all? And then is it safe? So, those are the things that we're looking for. What we want to do is have positive experiences around physical activity so that they will continue to go back to physical activity and make it so that students or your children will want to do it. The other thing is be open to all opportunities and possibilities. So when children are young, we really want to offer a variety of different activities to them. And don't be afraid that, at first things might not go well. But that's gonna happen, because especially for people who are young, they might not have a lot of exposure to different activities and maybe a lot of movement. So they might not be successful at first, but you need to persevere and then keep trying, and that is okay. Student might not like, or your child might not like some activity. That's why we're going to try something different. And bottom line is to remember, we want to have fun. Everybody wants to have fun. Your children, our students, and family members and teachers. Try to make it as fun as possible. Okay. So on this slide here is we have some arrows going across, and it kind of shows what we look at as like a continuum or progression of physical activity through an individual's school years. So, starting out preschool, early elementary age, what we kind of gear towards is all movement towards playing with different objects, different sports and games, and exploring different environments in their own environment that they're in, really given a variety of different movement experiences and positive ones. And then as students, and individuals develop to the middle school years, we start developing more specific skills, coordination and balance, and those pregame skills of, running and throwing and striking and kicking. And then also begin to start to, build a catalog of different things that your child or student likes. And then also start to, like, skills that they do start to develop, start to begin a little bit of generalizing to do them in different environments. And then the older school age years, we look at refining some of the movement skills. And I think this is very important for the older age individuals, is to match what their skills and strengths are and interests to different activities. So we almost start off, younger, preschool, like building a whole big variety of stuff. And then as the individual kind of gets older and develops more and develops skills and interests, we want to kind of narrow it a little bit. Not so much narrow, but select based on the skills and interests of the child or student. And that's where we assess some community resources that are going to be best suited, or community activities best suited for your children or students.
Okay, so family involvement, just some tips and pointers. Again, it's each to their own. Each family is going to be different. Encourage, whether it's siblings, parents, grandparents, foster parents, whoever it might be, encourage them. Your children, who doesn't like praise, who doesn't like encouragement, do the research. We'll get to a little bit of more in depth later on with regard to how you can research and what to look for. Support. The Charge, Syndrome Foundation is a great resource and support network where people can converse and say what worked for you. Oh, I had a terrible experience, X, Y. Oh no, try again. It's better in the fall time when the allergies aren't so bad, etc. Motivate. We do that a lot as educators in a school, having a token system, having students complete a certain number of tasks, again, to just see what they're able to do or what they're interested in, and then you can start to fade that away and say, okay, well, now is that student interested in doing the activity because they have that intrinsic motivation to get it done. They want to move, that's their goal. And then obviously building in preferences. Everybody, wants to do something that they like to do. You're more likely to continue to do it if you do like it. Model it. Don't sit there in a chair, say, ready, set, go, run, 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 and expect your child or your family members to continue without getting involved yourself. So model, show, be that model for your child. They will pick up on it. And then the age old, as Matt said, providing a variety of activities, having a lot of things up your sleeve for people to try, for individuals to try, not like go back to try in a different environment, etc. That's all very important. So we have, some pointers here about planning activities. We use these consistently in our classes. With the year that we've had to plan activities online, we've had to plan activities outdoor, we've had to plan activities where we couldn't share any equipment. So believe us when we say we know the stresses of planning activities and how difficult it can be. Here are just some things that we, from our experience, have felt worked with individuals with Charge. So having the consistent room or environment. Again, not so consistent that we can't change routine or develop a new routine. So having a little bit of a difference between going to a playground to use the playground and another outdoor area for a physical activity that is maybe more coordinated. Scheduling a consistent time, for example, getting up on a Saturday morning, you go on a family hike or a bike ride or something. It's that Saturday morning consistency. Completing exercise as a family, again, just all getting involved. We all need mentors, we all need peer groups, we all need models. It does help, strive for success if more people are involved, offering more choices, etc. The use of finish buckets, or if you don't have one of those in your home, laundry bucket, laundry basket, or closet where things go when they are finished. Timing, which is, an important factor here as well. You can't expect somebody to go on a 5-mile hike if they haven't done, gone further than the end of their driveway and back. So start short, build up the endurance. Maybe you do an activity of kicking the soccer ball around the yard for 4 or 5 minutes. Maybe the next week you do 5.5 minutes. Maybe the week after you add in, a friend or a peer and you do 7 minutes. So add on, build up the endurance there. Refer to the list again of preferred activities. So look at what they like, what they enjoy, and kind of incorporate them. And then if the individual does need certain things like a schedule, having a consistent a picture that they associate or a tactile symbol, which a lot of our students would have to represent physical activity or exercise time, and having that on display for them to see.
Yeah, and I'll just add on just a couple, expand on a couple of things. Mm-hmm. On the timing. Another thing that we've sometimes used is the concept of intervals, of doing a physical activity for a short period of time and then having a break period and then going back and doing more activity and then a break and then, shorten the break time and eventually eliminating it. And then the other point I just want to point out too is that I know we mentioned a variety of different activities a lot, and the reason why we mention it too is because sometimes there can be we hear a lot feedback from parents and stuff, a fear of trying something new and different, not being sure that your child can do it, and sometimes it's just the best thing to try it, because you never know. I mean, we've had students you know, over the years, and you never thought, you know, this student could be doing rock climbing or something, indoor rock climbing. But, you know, we gave it a shot, and, you know, lo and behold, you never thought this student would be, you know, able to do it. So you'll never know. Give it a try, assess, and then adjust, or maybe, you know what, this isn't going to be for my student or child. But don't be afraid to try.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as Matt just said, you know, we touched upon a lot of the activities that we do here on a consistent basis and that we've done in the past. And just to read them on the screen: modified soccer, modified golf, kickball, adaptive biking, snowshoeing, archery, rock climbing, bowling, boating, fishing, floor hockey, cricket, yoga, stroke Pilates, martial arts, dance, t-ball, modified baseball, an abundance of relay games, an abundance of exercise circuits, lots of cooperative games, again, getting that social piece, getting that somewhat interaction, a lot of the typical recess games, so your tag, your foursquare, your bulldog, modified jump rope, roller skating, and of course, swimming.
You know, and so this is just a partial list that we have done, but just it shows that there's a big variety, and there's lots of activities that you can do, and you don't have to necessarily, you know, join a sport team or join Special Olympics. You can do stuff in your backyard that's being active. You know, and we do a lot of that with our younger students, those cooperative games and recess games and circuits and relays that are just putting together a bunch of different movement skills with objects and stuff into making it into a game. So you're just building those physical skills, those movement skills that, you know, as they get older, can maybe transform into some, you know, lifetime recreational activity. So this is just a, you know, a brief list that can show that there is a, you know, a wide variety of different activities.
Absolutely. And to prove that we've done these activities, we do have some photographs, videos. You might see some familiar faces in these pictures, and we'll talk you through some of the activities here. So, you know, our first slide here, we have football. Who would think of, you know, playing a modified football or doing modified football activities in the deafblind program here at Perkins? But we do, you know, we do a lot of the skill components of modified football. You know, learning from an expert here. I'm still learning as well. But, you know, on the right, we have the footballs on a cone. And for some students, like taking the football off a cone rather than bending down. If bending down is difficult or it leads to us laying on the floor, maybe you bring the ball up so they don't have to go all the way down to the floor. And then in the photograph on the left, we have a young individual using a walker, and on the side is actually a paint can or an implement that you can take with you if you're going painting. The paint bucket, exactly. That, you know, is hooked on just from Home Depot, hooked onto the side of her walker. Put a nice brightly colored football in there, so she's able to navigate, but still, you know, play the game, because that's how she needed to play the game at the time. So again, similar, another popular young man in the program, older student who's, you know, working on shorter distance, walking shorter distances, understands the concept of carrying something to deposit it over the goal. We do have a black sheet behind our football goal here to help with some visual needs as well. But again, you're getting that nice stretch to reach to put the ball over with some assistance there from staff. So that's just an example of modifying some football activities.
And so what we're doing is we're just breaking down the sport of football into certain components, and we have the goal post there. We had the, you know, the yard markers out on our carpet there. So, you know, breaking components of the skill down, or doing portions of the sport is a way to modify.
Absolutely. And then you can incorporate the sign, you know, the activities and all the literacy piece that goes into it, and, you know, celebrating what a touchdown means, etc. Can be a nice social activity as well. So our next one here, next activity that we kind of rediscovered, let's say this past fall with being outside and socially distanced, is disc golf or frisbee golf. You know, it's played outside typically. take your typical components of the game of golf, etc. But the reason we're including this is that for different students, again, we modified it for the need of that student, which is kind of what we're trying to relay here today. We have an individual here, a young man, who's working on throwing, so the proper technique for a frisbee toss through the target. Maybe we were including to walking to the target, identifying like the next one if they're color coded or if you're using numbers. But for other students, that might look a little bit different. In the next photograph, again, wonderful young man is seated at a bench, but he has frisbees behind him. The task here is to turn around, take it from the table, and then reach forward. So a lot of that stretching, a lot of that, getting that range of motion in. And you know what? That's what we do. We just change the activity to suit the need of the student that day. Are they still physically active? Yes, they are. We've got some photographs here, and
yeah, sure. So on this, there's two photographs of a student who's standing on a aerobic step with a couple of different balls set up on the floor, and the student is working specifically on balance. And so what the student needs to do is reach out with one foot, his foot away from his body, and kick the ball, and then bring the foot back to the step without falling off, and then eventually without support. So this is just an example of an activity where we're really working on a specific ability in balance in this instance. So some of the other photos were more of modified sports and kind of recreational activities. This is honing in on something that's a little bit more specific. All of them are physically active, and then all students to the physical activity levels are different for every individual. I mean, that goes for all of us. So what might be vigorous for some could be light or moderate for others. So
yeah, we've another example in the next slide with a video of a young man and Matt playing an interesting game, but again working on some of those components.
So in this video, as it starts to play, there's several cones set up scattered across the gym, and I am the leader in this activity, and I am running and placing the cones down, and the student is following behind me, running and picking up the cones after I displace them. And so just the movement, different directions, running, bending down, squatting, and then this particular student liked to run, had a lot of energy at this time. So this was a good one. And it's also, if you have a child, someone who likes to knock things down, maybe if that's a preference for the individual, build it into a game or an activity like this. Okay, well, you like to knock things down. Not that we want to teach or encourage knocking down different items, but if you can put it into a game and say, look, now during this activity, this is when you can knock something down or over. So this is an example of something different. One of those kind of games we were mentioning before, where you're kind of just making stuff up.
So again, in the next one, one of our most popular sports, I would think, is something along the lines of kickball, baseball, cricket, using a long-handled implement. Nice structured routine. You hit, you get the feeling of the hit, place the bat down, and then you move. So you're doing a task, but you have the movement incorporated as well. We just wanted to show two examples here of, we have first a young man who's going to hit a bounced pitch independently. And again, just cues to drop that. but the expectation is they're walking to first base, which we have identified as a medium-sized, brightly coloured cone, knows to reach, to touch, to move on to the next one. And then, so similar activity, we have a young man, a preschooler, who's pitching the ball. So in the last video, we saw the ball being bounced by the teacher for the student to hit. Nice, brightly coloured, large ball, easy to visually attend to. Here we have a young man who's stabilising. He's standing. He's using a walker again, and we have a cardboard ramp that we've used in many different activities. But he's working on stabilising with one hand, reaching and pushing the ball, and enjoying watching it roll down, get to his peer, who then was completing a kick and then a walk to the bases. Then he would walk, pick up the ball, put it on top. So again, similar activity, modified for the needs and age level and developmental stages of these particular students. Just two small videos about the use of different balls and how, whether it's a sorting activity where you have ball pit balls and the differentiating between small cones or different shaped objects. Again, some of that pre-mathematics skills or literacy. But here, this young lady on the right is a proud member of the Deafblind program. And here we'll see her interact with a beach ball. You'll see her anticipate the beach ball.
1, 2,
have her
3.
hands up ready.
Wow. 1, 2, 3.
And enjoy the feeling
1,
of
2,
the
3.
back.
Oh.
And even how it feels when she puts her feet up to hold it.
Oh. Finish yourself. Last one. 1, 2, 3.
And then progress to a few years later.
1, 2.
Where here she is now bouncing a larger 12-inch, 14-inch maybe, brightly coloured yellow ball. Again, using that similar kind of hand motion, but a nice activity that potentially could become a group activity and family activity, something that we can then incorporate into other games and other activities.
And that's a nice example of some of the progression.
I believe this is our final pictures or video segment. Here we have a young lady who is completing an introductory kind of exercise, warm-up exercises with the use of Mayor Johnson pictures there on the left. She's inspecting it very closely. The image reads reach high, and one of the images was in and out. This point, I think this slide really speaks to our earlier point about the literature that reflects movement and how it can help with language skills, whether that's sign language, asking for more, signing stop and go, or any of those things that are included, or verbal language. We'll hear this young lady utter the words in, out, as she moves her body in that way.
In, out. And out. That's right. Good. In, out. And down.
Again, trying to develop as many different movement skills as we can as students are young, in hopes that down when they're older in their future, that can be utilized in some other, lifetime recreational physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
So this is leading us to selecting suitable or selecting the best activities for your, family members or students. And I think, as the students get older, and even when your students are younger and you're trying things that are out in the community, you want to still try to select activities and programs that match, what the students can do well, their skills, in some of their interests. So one of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit about in some more detail, we're going to pull up on another screen. We developed a recreational activity guide that I think is useful and helpful to parents and family members. We kind of go through different points, and I'm going to read through them that I think that it's important to think about before you go into participating in an activity in the community. Things that I think you need to consider and be aware of before you jump into an activity to help it make it be more successful. So I'm going to go into those in a minute. But the other thing on this slide is a picture of a screenshot of an exercise app that we've used here over the last 5 or 6 years that we found that was very successful. A lot of our students would charge, and other students as well. And it's called Seconds Pro exercise app, and it's free, or it's a few dollars for the advanced one. And you can totally customize it, put in any exercises or movements that you want, and the amount of time that you want to do it, and the amount of intervals. And you can display it on a big screen, which we've done many times. And it's actually a nice activity to do in the home with the family. We've had, some of our students that are residential have used it in the cottage as a group cottage activity. And you can all do it. Everybody can do it together because you're doing all the exercises at your own pace. And it'll verbalize it also, tell you how much time is left and tell you the name of the next exercise that's coming up. So you have the visual and the auditory piece that has worked well for us. So I think we'll probably go to the next slide and we'll see what we're at. Okay, do we want to pull the activity guide up?
So on this final slide, before we move on to the recreation activity guide, we've left our contact information there. I'm also happy to, if you lose the slide, reach out to Joanne. She has our contact information if you have specific questions. But yeah, we're going to finish with looking at the recreational activity guide, which was developed here by Matt as part of a group class that we had in the community, titled Physically Active Recreation in the Community, so Park. And these were just some of the things that we discovered when moving into the community and assessing areas for accessibility, etc. We'll go through this now.
Okay, so the first section is activity relevance, and these are several kind of statements. And the way we use this is we would, or if we recommend it to a family, is you go through and read these statements and give like a yes or a no. So it does match or it doesn't. And so I'll read through them quickly. The activity matches participants' interests, skills, and strengths. The activity can be considered somewhat important to the participant. There's a high probability of continuing the activity into the future. Participation in this activity will lead towards achieving a personal goal for the participant. The activity is designed so that it will help the participant reach their goal if they have one. The offered time of the activity is compatible to the participant's schedule or availability. Transportation to the activity can be easily arranged. The expenses related to the activity are affordable for the participant. The facility, activity, or program offers discounts or financial assistance. Funding resources or scholarships or discounts are available. During participation, student demonstrates enjoyment of or indicated they enjoyed the activity, and the activity is considered to be somewhat safe. So those are things that you could think about when planning or deciding on doing an activity out in the community before spending a lot of money and stuff. So these are some considerations, I think. So this really comes into like the planning of activities. Then the next area we look at is the facility accessibility. So is the layout of the facility easy for the participant to maneuver? Are restrooms accessible? Is the facility or program or activity conveniently located for the participant? Is it, walking distance, public transportation? How is the parking? Those sorts of concerns. The environment of the activity, is it, clear and hazard-free? Accessibility and parking. So that's some facility accessibility needs. Then We go through an area of personnel, like does the program or activity, are they providing coaches, volunteers, or special trained belayers for, indoor rock climbing? But some of the things you want to look at, is a assistant needed for safely participate in the activity? If needed, is an assistant provided by the activity program or organization? Or is an assistant allowed? Are you able to bring your PCA or assistant or another family member to accompany them? And is it free of charge? So these are some things you want to try to check out beforehand. Additional or specialized equipment, is it needed to participate in the activity? And if so, is that provided? Or do you have to provide it yourself? Does the activity require specific skills, techniques, or prerequisites prior to participating? Does the individual need to be able to swim before doing this activity, or have some other, prerequisite skill? And then continuing on, kind of on that same line, is activity personnel organizing or instructing the activity is able to safely modify the equipment or activity. Is the Challenger Baseball League, are they able to modify, people organizing it for your individual? Is the activity require specifically trained or certified personnel? In other words, like a cited ski guide or certified swim instructor or a certified fitness instructor. And then, or private sessions or one-on-one sessions available. So these are what we've come across based on experience that I think are key things to consider and think about prior to going out into more community-based programs or activities. These are some considerations to look at. So we use this, as Maeve said, during a community class that we take, and we actually, and this is that we do this for each student and facility that we go to, and we actually we do a little, we get a rating. We just count up all the yeses and nos.
Yeah, so it's like a checklist almost.
Yeah. So, but I think the important thing is these are just some things to consider when going out into the community beforehand, because we want to try to make the experiences as positive as we can be for family and for everybody.
Yep. And I think there's one thing in there that isn't included, such as an interpreter. If it's needed, is the facility going to provide an interpreter? We go with our students, so we don't have that on the guide because we are there to provide that service. But otherwise, I think exactly, just not to get overwhelmed, but to think about, oh goodness, where do I start? Okay, is it accessible? Are there restrooms available? Is it open at the times that I want to go? Those kind of basic things.
And I think, just other thing to just consider is that, you can build up some of the same concepts. Maybe you go and do something in the community, 10 or 15 minutes. The next time, 15, 20 minutes, that gradual progression. So a lot of the modifications and suggestions and tips we mentioned earlier, those all apply to, doing something, out in the community. And that's what we, when we bill for, we do things in a smaller controlled session in our gym and try to generalize them to different parts on campus and in the community. That can be done the same in the home. Do some things, in your home environment. Students and family members that feel comfortable, and then gradually go out into the community. Not to say that you can't jump right out into the community whenever, but it's assess it and see if it works for you, because you never know sometimes.
Absolutely. So yeah, that brings us kind of to a close today. We really enjoyed putting together this presentation. It was hard to kind of think of just keeping it in the timeline and keeping it streamlined, because there is so much that we could say, but I think Matt just said it there, is try. It's easy to be overwhelmed, and it's easy to look at, I can't go there because of behavior. I can't go there in case someone says I'm too loud. I can't go there because, et cetera, et cetera. But just dip your toe in the water, and hopefully we've given you some ideas, some a little bit of tools in your toolbox to say, you know what, I'm going to give that a go, and then come back, think about it, but in a positive manner, perhaps to try again in the future.
Encourage as much as you can. Encourage, don't be discouraged if it doesn't work out, and persevere and keep trying.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.